On today's show, Donovan Mitchell traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. What are the Cleveland Cavaliers wanting to accomplish with this? And what about the Knicks? Did the Jazz make the right deal? We'll talk about that and a little bit of Eurobasket on today's Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You are Locked On to the NBA. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On NBA is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. But the best way you can help us grow is to comment below. What do you think? What was your initial reaction to the Donovan Mitchell trade? Did the Jazz make the right move? Let us know in the comment section. And we're back again. Joining me from Locked On Nuggets and DNVR. What you got for me, Adam Mares?
A weirdly busy day in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like I didn't expect a busy day today, but here we are.
It was one of those where we were like, dang, what are we going to talk about yesterday? And then today it's like, oh, there's just a million things. There was like 8 games of Eurobasket. There was a huge trade. There's all these different things. So yeah, a lot of stuff to get into. We'll break down the Donovan Mitchell trade. We'll talk about the Cavs perspective of it. What does this Cavs core look like now? Like their depth chart all of a sudden looks like they're ready to contend. I don't know to contend for what, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Jazz side of it. They apparently had a big decision to make whether they wanted to take the Knicks deal or whether they wanted to take the Cavs deal. And so we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the Knicks side of it. A couple people thought it was in the bag. People thought it was in the bag for Donovan Mitchell to go to the Knicks. And now he's not going there. And then we'll talk about some of people. Then we'll talk about some of the Eurobasket stuff. But let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the deal is, if you haven't seen it by now, which it was a shot heard around the world, Cleveland sent Larry Markkinen, Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, 3 unprotected picks to Utah. So 2025, 27, and 29. So those are out there picks. And then pick swaps in between years, so 26 and 28. And Donovan Mitchell, the lone guy going back to the Cleveland Cavaliers. What were your thoughts and what's your reaction to the Cavs side of this?
I think it's a great deal. Honestly, I think it's a great deal for both sides, but I think it's a great deal for Cleveland, who has a really interesting team. I mean, they enter next season to me as a top 3 or 4 most interesting team in all of the NBA. Losing the players that you did, Colin Sexton, you knew was probably a guy that was on the outs anyway with the emergence of Darius Garland. So he was a guy you already looked at as expendable. Larry Markkinen, okay, good player, but you got a front court that's already great there. I know it worked last year, playing some of that 3 big lineup, but that wasn't going to be a long-term fit. And then Ochai Agbaji is a guy that's, he wasn't ever there. So you're not really attached to him. I think he could be a good player. So you get rid of guys and then picks that worry about that down the line, but you put together a roster that I look at and I have no idea where they fit into the Eastern Conference. They might be really good. They might be like near the top of the Eastern Conference. It's exciting.
It's like it's like, okay, they may be on if we tiered the Eastern Conference, they may be in between that group of like, all right, there's the top group of like Boston, Milwaukee, Miami, Philly. Right. And then there's the next group of like Toronto and then the Cavs were there. And then like, there's like that group underneath them, and they're probably like right in the middle there, but there's a chance like this team could be so good, and if these 4 guys especially gel together, then they could be in the top. Like they could have a really good regular season. It's interesting to me that now we're doing the Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland backcourt, where if he went to the Knicks and it was a Jalen Brunson backcourt with Donovan Mitchell, there would be the, LOL, the Knicks with their small backcourt. How are they going to defend? But now we get this interesting experiment of, all right, you have these 2 small guards in Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, but then you have 2 centers. It's like, wings be damned. We're just going to be like guards and centers on this team. And I kind of think it's going to work. And like you mentioned, their depth, Karis LeVert coming off the bench, Ricky Rubio, Kevin Love coming off the bench. Like this team all of a sudden is like really ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, the piece that makes it different from New York is obviously Mobley. I mean, he's a guy that can be a defensive player of the year type candidate in short order. And so you look at the youth with Donovan Mitchell, he's a little bit older than, the other 2 guys, but he's not that old. I mean, he still has a long runway of his prime ahead of him. So I think that's the difference, is you have pieces behind those 2 that you feel that can make up for some of the defensive shortcomings. But I will say, when we get to the like contender tier, when you're talking about the Bostons, the Milwaukees or whatever, I do look at this team and think that backcourt probably is going to be more fun and more regular season successful than playoff successful. But guess what? Cleveland's not in the spot where they have to worry about that. Like they're still in the climb, and this helps them climb a little bit faster.
And you talk about they're in this for the long run. Like they have Mitchell for 3 years, so this next upcoming season, then 2 more, then a player option after that. Jarrett Allen has 4 years left on his deal. Garland just signed his 5-year extension in July, and then Mobley is on his rookie deal, so he's there for the foreseeable future. Like this is a team that they're talking about some of these picks they sent out, 27 and 29. Like they'll still have all these guys if everything stays together.
Yeah, there's a runway there for them to really grow and gel together, and just have some fun. I mean, I think there is. It gets underrated how important it is when you are in a real rebuild to have like a good sense or a good feeling of that. And I feel like this team, we've already seen them tweeting back and forth at each other. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, the various guys. Everybody seems really excited and energized for it. So. To me, the East gets a little bit tougher. Again, I'm not ready to put them in that top tier with the Bostons, the teams that have already kind of gone through, the playoffs multiple times and really know who they are. But they're a team to me that I think is just going to be so intriguing, so fun, so dynamic. And now I think Darius Garland, I have a pretty good sense of what kind of player he's going to be. He could still surprise us and make a big leap. I think with Donovan Mitchell, I feel pretty confident. I know exactly what kind of player he is.
Yep.
Jarrett Allen, same thing. Now, to me, it all comes down to Evan Mobley, who, to me, has such a high upside. I don't know if he'll get there. I don't know when he'll get there. But to me now, I look at that team and go, okay, they have some really nice pieces. They have one guy to me that is a superstar. They got some star players, but they got one guy who can be a superstar in Evan Mobley. And now we get to kind of sit back and watch and see if he grows into that.
And it'll be interesting for me to see like who they stagger, like who eventually they stagger. Well, there will be Mitchell Mobley lineups. There will be Garland Allen lineups. There will be Mitchell Allen lineups. Like which ones work together the best? That's going to be the interesting thing to see in the regular season. And so we know those 4 guys. Those 4 guys are interchangeable a little bit. You can play them kind of all together. You can play them all separately. And then there's Isaac Okoro, who's the 5th guy in that starting lineup, probably.
Right, we didn't even mention him.
And a lot of stuff hinges on him already. I know Locked On Cavs is already kind of talking about him. Like, dang, we're going to talk about him a lot this year because it all seems to hinge on him. If his jump shot develops a little bit more, and defensively, like they have this small backcourt, but Isaac Okoro could be that guy that covers up a couple of those holes.
No question about it. They've just got a lot of pieces. They're a very fun team. I'm in on the Cavs this year. I do think last year they were a feel-good story. Yeah. And they kind of pole vault past a few steps now to where they're just like, the clock almost starts ticking a little bit quicker than maybe you would have expected. But that I like that in the NBA. I like when a team makes a move like that. And most of all, Nick, I like when it comes out of nowhere. Yeah. This trade makes sense to me. And it's hilarious that it came out of nowhere because, like, when it happened, you're like, oh, there you go. Because when it happened, I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, there's always like those rumblings or talks like, oh, the Cavs with this Colin Sexton thing, that could be some kind of sign and trade or something that they do, and you're like, oh, okay, that'd be cool if like this small market Cavs team that's young up and coming team, but maybe it's a little early for them to make a go-to like a win now move, and boom, they make it out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you have this new it like changes the whole team basically, right? Like we kind of knew these guys, and now all of a sudden. You bring in Donovan Mitchell, who's probably their number 1 option on offense now. He's probably like their number 1, and that changes a lot of the dynamics of that team.
My hot take is I'm not a big Donovan Mitchell guy, full disclosure. I mean, he's a great player. He's a really tough cover. I kind of I wonder who the primary defensive assignment is now. I wonder who it is that draws that first one, because whoever it is, the other guy is probably going to have a good night.
And this team already kind of has a decent bench, too. Like, if Ricky Rubio comes back, they have Karis LeVert still. Right. Kevin Love, Chetty Osman is fine. Like, they have a couple other pieces. So it's not like this team is just, like, super top-heavy without any kind of bench at all, too. So it'll be interesting to see this team grow together. I'm interested to see how the Cavs play this year. There's all kinds of questions that we can talk about. You can go listen to Locked On Cavs. They'll have all the angles all year. Coming up, let's talk about a different angle. The Jazz side of it. The Jazz now have just been completely torn down. They were broken by the Dallas Mavericks, Adam Mares. They were. They were destroyed by them. We'll talk about their rebuild, what they're starting with now. We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me give you a PSA from the NHTSA. Do you think are you one of those people that think it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit. It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is our reaction time is way slower when you're high. Not only do you put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. All right, Adam, we are continuing on this Donovan Mitchell trade that came out of nowhere. That's just exciting. It's just one of those things where you see the Woj bomb and it just, as someone that covers the NBA, and I'm sure for you as well, it just makes you happy. Just all of a sudden, like your heart starts racing, you're ready to go, and then there's so many different angles and sides that you can look at. Let's look at the Utah Jazz side. So they get Colin Sexton, Larry Markin, and Ochai Agbaji, 3 unprotected picks. They get the swaps as well. And Colin Sexton signed a 4-year, $72 million deal to join the Jazz now. And the Jazz kickstart their rebuild with this and then the Gobert deal.
It's interesting. 7 first-round picks and 3 pick swaps. Like, it's so funny how a team goes from, to your point, trying to contend. I think the wheels really fell off for maybe 2 years ago, and then they just have kind of been like slow crashing since then. But you go from 2 seasons ago, are they a real contender? Is this the chance? Is their window open? They blow a giant lead in the bubble, and here they are now with 7 draft picks, 3 pick swaps, and it's like, no, full-on reset. Yeah. And oh, by the way, they also got a bunch of players: Walker Kessler, Malik Beasley, Taylor Norton Tucker, Jared Vanderbilt, Ochai Agbaji, Larry Markkinen, Colin Sexton. Like, before you even get to the future picks, you still have a bunch of young players now that might turn out to be really good players. So I don't know. I hate the NBA when we celebrate teams that just load up on draft picks. I saw on ESPN earlier, it was like, who won the offseason? And they were like, Utah. I'm like, well, they went from a good team to a bad team. Are we sure they won? But nonetheless, they're set up to, have a lot of flexibility whichever direction they choose to go.
Yeah, well, since the Hinkie thing, right? Since the bottoming out of the Sixers with all that, it's been like it's almost been like a weird like Cold War like arms race, but to picks if you're tanking, right? It's like, all right, let's just get as many as we can and just try to like combine. They have 13 unprotected or lightly protected picks through 2029.
That's ridiculous. Honestly, I hate that though. This is ridiculous. So and by the way, this is how the NBA works. This is a sneaky, untold story of the NBA. That there are these moments in time, and the most high profile of these was with Golden State when we didn't do the cap smoothing, so we had the 1 year with the giant, and it allowed them to afford Kevin Durant. We're in this weird period of time. It's like a 3-year run or 2-year run where every star player is worth double the amount of picks they were 5 years ago. Yeah. And Utah somehow managed to take advantage of 2 players. And I don't know if this is just how it is going forward. If 5 years from now, superstars cost 4 or 5 draft picks, or maybe we're just in a little bubble and Utah was like, wow, look at this draft picks bubble. Let's trade our 2 guys, get 13 draft picks. And 5 years from now, they're just going to stay loaded.
It's like The Big Short. Have you ever seen that movie about the house, about the housing market where they just start? What's the guy's name? He's Schmidt on New Girl. He's Max Greenfield is just like handing out loans. He's just like, the lower the credit score, the better for me. I'm just handing out loans, and eventually, like we know that it pops, and like eventually it bursts, and then all of a sudden all those are just all those buildings are just worthless now at a certain point. And I wonder if that's going to be what it's going to be like for these picks.
Maybe.
But you mentioned
there's something to it. I will say there is something to it, and we saw some of the moves Oklahoma City made this year were totally moves that were like everybody knew that their 27th and 31st pick wasn't worth anything to them because they already have 8 picks in a draft. They don't want 9 rookies on their roster. So maybe the same thing runs into Utah. I don't know. They'll probably have to play their hand differently.
According to Woj, Utah also has Bogdanovich, Clarkson, and Conley that they're apparently going to try to get more picks maybe out of, but they're going to trade those guys probably.
So dumb.
They have Malik Beasley too, Larry Markkinen, Stanley Johnson. Like those guys, those are their older guys.
Well, I will say this though: Mike Conley can help a team win a championship. Bojan Bogdanovic can help a team win a championship. Jordan Clarkson maybe can help a team win a championship. Like they have pieces now that I don't know that they're going to get these type of deals. If they do, so help us all. But nonetheless, who they trade those players to will probably impact the season.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to be like the next OKC that trades a Al Horford and is huge in the finals and in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like that's who it's going to come down to. So I wouldn't be surprised if these guys enter the season just because Danny Ainge has got time now, right? He's like, all right, I'm just going to sit back and wait till the right deal comes. What about those? So they'll get more picks for those guys. But what about these players they already have? Like, does any of these guys stand out to you? Colin Sexton, Agbaji, Vanderbilt, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Walker Kessler.
Yeah. Walker Kessler's interesting to me. I mean, he's kind of a more almost traditional, it seems, center and blocks a lot of shots. But his block rate in college was insane. Like wasn't. He was a huge outlier. So he's intriguing to me. You know, I'm not a huge Chayabaji guy, but I mean, he's a rookie. He can shoot the ball. He's got some athleticism. So who knows? Outside of that, I don't know. I'm not in love with any of these guys, to be honest with you.
You're not ready. You're not ready for the Taylor Horton-Tucker renaissance. Like every single Lakers player that they ever trade away is like Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, for real.
Russell makes an all-star team. Like all these guys.
I mean, Taylor Horton-Tucker's a guy I like, but he's like Malik Beasley. They're not guys that are cornerstone pieces. Right, they're good players that could be a good role players on better teams, but that's not where they are. Malik Beasley's going to get a lot of shots up next year.
If they end up trading Conley, Clarkson, and Bogdanovich, is this the worst team in the NBA?
It might be by design. I mean, I don't even know if you get rid of those guys. I don't know what your roster is. I don't know who's handling the ball. What are you trying to accomplish there? So, like I said, I think they will trade those guys. This is what's interesting is now the interesting part happens because all of those players can make an impact.
Yeah, and hopefully on teams like the Mavericks and the Nuggets, they get in on that and they get some of these guys, especially for our listeners over on our shows that are probably always asking, "Can we get these guys? Can we get these guys?"
Right.
On the Knicks side of things, so trade talks started with them way back. I mean, they've been in this game for months talking about Donovan Mitchell. It almost seemed like it was an inevitability. A lot of us thought. ESPN just did that GM scout. Coach survey of 15 people from around the league, and they asked, where do you think Donovan Mitchell will play? And there was 11 responses for the Knicks. They didn't give them multiple choice, but it was the Knicks were the number one, and then it was the Utah Jazz, I think, were number two.
No, I think it was 14 people said the New York Knicks. One person said the Utah Jazz, if I recall.
It was a lot. It was overwhelmingly. Everybody thought it was going to happen, even in the league. And so,
you know who else thought it was going to happen? The New York Knicks. Because this is what happened. They did the thing where they took the first pitch. We're not swinging. They took a second pitch. They took a third pitch. They're like, all right, we're comfortable here. We're going to make this guy throw us a strike. And all of a sudden, out of left field, this other deal happened. I think this is somewhat, I don't want to say catastrophic for the Knicks because I just don't think Donovan Mitchell was that great. But it certainly felt like he was playing A, B, and C. And they played their hand extremely poorly and ended up getting outbid here. So to me, I look at that and I go, the Knicks, the new Knicks. By the way, the Knicks are very well known a CAA team. Donovan Mitchell, a CAA client. Yep. So to me, if I am a Knicks front office person right now, or if I'm Knicks ownership, I'm probably looking at this going, this is not the way you guys said this was going to play out.
I'll take your baseball metaphor a little bit further. They even stepped up to the plate when they came to Dallas and attended Mavericks versus Jazz, and their entire front office and everybody was there, Worldwide West, Leon Rose, everybody was there in Dallas to take on this. And we thought, oh, they're here for Jalen Brunson. Well, they're also there for Donovan Mitchell too. They wanted both of them, and they had a path to both of them. But I have a hard time being mad at the Knicks if they offered this deal. So Woj tweeted this out. You could tell immediately, some of these reports, you're like, oh, the Knicks are doing damage control for their fans, so they know that they actually offered and they didn't just fart around and not really offer a deal. So the deal was, according to Woj, at the start of July, it was going to be RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson, 3 unprotected first-round picks. Now, Zach Lowe clarified that 2 of those picks were going to be Knicks picks, and another one was going to be another one of those first-round picks they got in the draft for all that. Which deal would you rather have had? The one that the Jazz got, or this Knicks package?
I like RJ Barrett better than any piece that came back. I don't know what Utah's plan is here, though. Utah clearly wants draft capital, and then they're going to make a move off of that, because I don't think any of the players that they got are that exciting. RJ Barrett, I think, is a good player. Is he further along in a timeline? Did they not like him? So I don't know. I look at that. I probably like the Knicks pick better personally. It just clearly seems like it was against whatever Utah was wanting. They were wanting picks. They weren't wanting players, it appears. And that's what they went for.
I kind of would almost rather have the Knicks picks than the Cavs picks too, because of how young those Cavs guys are, right?
Man, both teams, it's like you're betting on a horse because these picks again are 6-7 years away.
Yeah, right.
And who are you counting on to be more incompetent 6-7 years down the line? Man, that's a tough, real Sophie's choice.
Dan Gilbert, or
yeah,
go with JD in the straight shot over there.
Two JD in the straight shot. That's 2 winning horses you're betting on right there. I think.
Is that what his horse is called? The straight shot? Like that's a good horse name.
I think that's his. That was the. Yeah, it probably. It's a better horse name than band name.
Oh my gosh. All right, coming up, let's talk a little bit more of the Knicks, and then I want to get into Eurobasket. Slovenia played Lithuania. It was a great game today. Germany beat France.
Heck yeah.
Some great stuff. Adam was all over these, so we'll talk about that coming up. All right, Adam, we're continuing our talk about Donovan Mitchell. And now the New York Knicks, they don't get Donovan Mitchell, and now they kind of just walk into this season with their big acquisition of Jalen Brunson. They have Jalen Brunson. RJ Barrett signed his extension, but he knows that he was in trade discussions, and so I don't know if anyone thinks that they're safe over there.
Yeah.
There's talks about Evan Fournier being in a deal sent away. They still have Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson's still there. The Knicks apparently balked on including Quentin Grimes in a trade with RJ Barrett, so they didn't want to put both of those guys in a deal.
I like Quentin Grimes, so I can't blame him for that. I like him. I think he's good.
What are your thoughts on this Knicks team going into the season now?
They've got to be a little bummed. I mean, not only did Donovan Mitchell not go to the Knicks, but he went out to a team in the East that probably leapfrogs them. And I fully recognize that when I say they leapfrog them, they were already ahead of them. What I'm saying, though, is you made the splash to get Jalen Brunson. You think, okay, we're climbing in the standings. It's like, no. Cleveland's climbing higher than you are now, and you're down there. So I look at teams like Miami Heat, Boston Celtics, Milwaukee Bucks, Philadelphia 76ers, Toronto Raptors, Cleveland Cavaliers. Sure. Those teams are all, to me, pretty much a lock to be better than the Knicks, or I think have a really good chance. And then you've got teams like the Bulls, the Nets, the Hawks. The Knicks, to me, sadly, after all of this would be so Knicks for them to have all this excitement, big moves, big splash, play-in team.
It's another like star that was destined to go to the Knicks, that in the same vein as Zion and Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, and all those that have come before them. And so now I think
one felt even more inevitable, though, to me, Nick. Like this one actually the New York connection there, just how open a secret it was. This one to me feels like a real miss, even if I don't personally think Donovan Mitchell is worth being that excited for the way the Knicks were. It still felt like it was going to happen, and it didn't.
All the Donovan Mitchell tweeting about the Mets all offseason, like anytime I saw that come through my tweet deck, I'm like, man, it's just destined to happen with the Knicks, and for him to be there, and you can imagine MSG. But yeah, the Knicks, I mean, they got relatively better over the offseason, and now it's just like it's not as exciting as it would have been if they had Donovan Mitchell. So that's the team they walk into, hoping for some internal development, and then we'll see what happens. All right, let's move over to Eurobasket. There was a Eurobasket started with group play, and there was a bunch of really interesting games, starting with Slovenia versus Lithuania.
Yeah, this might be the game of pool play, to be honest. They're the best game, and I thought it was a fantastic game. Luka kind of shaky in this one. So if people don't know, Lithuania and Slovenia, 2 of the 5 best teams, maybe 4 best teams in all of this. So the fact that they squared off in the very first game in pool play, that's pretty meaningful. And then on top of that, they have a really tough, they kind of got a tough bracket. So this was one of those games where you looked at France is in this bracket, who's going to be a very good team. There's one other good team in this one. I can't remember what other team was in it. Is it Bosnia? Bosnia is in this one. Mm-hmm. So you look at it and say, hey, some good team is going to get knocked out in this pool. And whatever team won this one had a very good inside shot of winning, of being the 1 seed basically out of this group. And Slovenia just narrowly edged him out thanks to Luka Doncic not having a great game, but having a fantastic close to the game.
Germany, the other team in this group B, that we think will be decent. They actually beat France today. But yeah, Luka in this game, he went 4-14. He did not shoot the ball well at all, but it just had a classic Luka game where he's just smiling at guys. He's flopping. He's like getting in people's heads. Like Jonas Valanciunas and Sabonis, both for Lithuania, both clocked Luka right in the nose in different moments in this game. Luka just took it, went to the free throw line, and his passing, he had 10 assists, but those are FIBA assists. They measure assists differently in FIBA than they do in the NBA. If these were NBA, like if these were John Stockton, Utah Jazz type assists that they were counting, he would have had 14, 15, something like that. He was just passing all over the place, and that's what really unlocked their win. Slovenia is just better when their guards are going, their three-pointers are going down. They went 10 of 28 in this game, which is not great for them, but it was still just enough to get it going. And then with Jonas Valanciunas and Domantas Sabonis, Lithuania wants to play inside. They want to play with those big guys, and they didn't really get them going very much. I
don't know if I love that pairing. And this is one of the difficult things here is Lithuania is going to need some shooting. They just don't have a ton of it. Kuzminskas is a guy that I think maybe plays a little bit better as a stretch four there.
Yeah.
But how hard is that to bench an NBA player, like an actual and a good one? Big Val, Sabonis, those are good NBA players. I just don't know if they're good NBA players together. So that was a tough loss. I mean, if Slovenia was favored in this game, they were supposed to win. They did win. It was narrow. But to me, that will probably be the game of pool play, and it happened on day number one.
Another game that was kind of interesting. France loses to Germany. Germany wins 76 to 63, and France has Gobert, Fournier, Lualo Cabarrot, Teo Maledon, Yabusele, if you remember him, Elia Kobo,
of course.
If you remember him, some of these guys, and they go
first
down.
team all but,
and they go down to Dennis Schroder, Franz Wagner, Daniel Theis is on the German team. He doesn't start for them, but an interesting game for Germany.
An interesting game for Germany. Such a disappointing game for France, who comes in as one of the favorites in all of this, and they lose to Germany, who, again, you mentioned it, Franz Wagner, very good player. Germany played great. Wagner played, by the way, tonight with no fear, and this is my biggest note from this game. Rudy Gobert, the Stifle Tower, the defensive player of the year.
No blocks.
Nobody was afraid of him in this game. It was actually laughable how much that Germany was going at him. And Franz Wagner, one of the highlights of the game, driving right at him, goes to this little spin move and just shoots a little Dirk shot. Actually, at a night when Dirk's German jersey was being retired to the Raptors, Franz Wagner shoots a one-legged Dirk fadeaway over him like it was nothing, almost as if it was an insulting Dirk one-legged fadeaway. So this was the shocker of the night that France, one of the favorites, looks so pathetic.
And so this is group play, so it doesn't mean they get knocked out just yet, but they're in that really tough group that we mentioned before, and so now they kind of have an upward climb as they're trying to get out of it now.
63 points, by the way, 63 points they scored. What the heck, man?
Yeah, what was there was Spain scored 114 in their game.
Right. France scored 63. Unbelievable.
I don't think this France team doesn't have as many NBA players as they used to have, right? That's Gobert, Fournier.
They got enough.
That's fine. I don't know.
It's
like when Tony Parker used to be on their team.
I can't believe you're not standing harder for just the Dirk magic. You don't think this had anything to do with Dirk's jersey getting retired?
It had everything to do with it. He was there. Their jersey. There was a great montage that was played. There was celebration. There was Mark Cuban was there, and Jason Kidd sporting a new arm sleeve tattoo that he's finishing. There's just all kinds of good stuff.
Oh wow, I missed that part. I missed that detail.
It's sneaky. You miss it if you're not paying attention. That's the kind of detail you get on these Locked On shows because we're following every team.
Great detail.
What other games stuck out to you today?
Bosnia and Herzegovina narrowly beating Hungary. They actually had a pretty comfortable lead before completely choking it away. But they do get a 10-point, a little bit of a comfortable win. And then the other one is Turkey and Montenegro, a close game in this one. I'm kind of surprised actually with how close it was. Turkey is a team that I think should be pretty good, and one of I don't know about a contender to win it all, but they should be a team that at least in that group A, they should be at the top of that. And the fact that they struggled as much as they did was a little bit surprising.
Yeah, Turkey is interesting with Şengün and Furkan Korkmaz and Cedi Osman, and then the Mavs legend Shane Larkin, 18 points. How does Shane Larkin get to play for Turkey?
So I don't think people know this. Shane Larkin is a legend in Europe. Shane Larkin is like the Steph Curry of Europe.
Well, he's a legend in Dallas too for different reasons.
There you go.
Different reasons.
Not a bad game. He could either come back to the NBA and be Shane Larkin, or he could go to Europe and be Steph Curry. So he picked right.
I'm down for it. It's like Mike Tobey playing for Slovenia. He's like their best center that they could ever have. And in the NBA, I don't know what he would be.
He's Mike Tobey.
If I say anything bad about Mike Tobey, it really comes back to my channel for Locked On Mavs. There you go. That's Eurobasket. That's what happened in the NBA today. We'll continue to cover the
Lithuania, France tomorrow. That will be a good one. Lithuania, France is probably the game of tomorrow. So
and games all weekend, all on ESPN Plus. Love it.
Basketball's back. I've been telling people this. Like, if you're an NBA fan, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Jonas Antetokounmpo. If you turn on the TV, I know people think, oh, it's Eurobasket, this or that. You're going to know all the guys. Yeah. It's good basketball.
You're going to know as many guys as you would know in the NBA or care about, right?
It's so true, man. It's so true. I mean, look, I just mentioned 3 of the top, six players in the NBA?
Probably the 3 best NBA players.
Maybe the 3 best players. So
we're biased.
I'm into it, man. I'm into Eurobasket. I'm excited for it. And it's only going to pick up steam next week when you get into the elimination round.
There you go. You can go and follow Locked On Nuggets, Adam Mares and Matt Moore doing great stuff over there. With Isaac Harris on Locked On Mavs. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On NBA.